The sun hung low over the Montana plains, painting the weathered cabin in shades of amber and gold. Jake Coleman stood on his front porch, rolling his shoulders to work out the knots that had settled there. After another long day of mending fences and herding cattle, his brown leather jacket creaked softly as he moved, the sound mixing with a gentle whisper of wind through the tall grass dot at 32. Jake had been running the Coleman Ranch alone for 3 years now, ever since his father passed and left him the sprawling property. The isolation hadn't bothered him much at first. He'd always been comfortable with his own company, finding peace in the rhythm of ranch work and the endless expanse of sky above. But lately, the silence felt heavier somehow, pressing against him like a weight he couldn't shake. Tonight, all he wanted was to collapse into bed and sleep for 12 uninterrupted hours. His bones ached from hauling feed bags, and his hands were rough and sore from wrestling with stubborn cattle. The simple pleasure of sinking into his old mattress and letting exhaustion carry him away seemed like the greatest luxury in the world. But as Jake reached for his front door, the sound of an approaching vehicle made him pause. A dust cloud rose in the distance, growing larger as a beat-up pickup truck bounced along the dirt road leading to his property. Jake frowned, pushing his hat back slightly. He wasn't expecting anyone, and visitors were rare out here, especially this close to sunset. The truck came to a stop near his porch, and Jake felt his breath catch as 3 young women climbed out. They moved with an easy grace despite the long journey, their sundresses and flowing hair catching the last rays of daylight. The eldest, a redhead with kind eyes, stepped forward first. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice carrying a soft southern accent. "Are you Jake Coleman?" "That's me," Jake replied, stepping down from the porch. Up close, he could see the worry etched in her features, the way her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a worn piece of paper. "I'm Sarah Beth," she said, gesturing to her companions. "These are my sisters, Mary Claire and Anna Rose. We're the Henderson sisters from Georgia. We've been driving for 2 days straight, and we're completely lost." Mary Claire, with gentle features, stepped forward. "Our car broke down about 5 miles back. We managed to get it running again, but we're not sure it'll make it much further." Anna Rose, the youngest with dark hair that shimmered in the fading light, added quietly, "We were hoping maybe you could help us. We don't have anywhere else to go." Jake studied their faces, seeing genuine distress beneath their polite smiles. Their clothes were rumpled from travel, and exhaustion shadowed their eyes. Whatever had brought them all the way from Georgia to his remote corner of Montana, it was clearly important enough to risk everything. "What brings you ladies so far from home?" Jake asked, his voice gentler now. Sarah Beth's composure cracked slightly. "Our grandmother. She lived here in Montana, and she left us her property in her will. We came to see it, but the directions we have are all mixed up. We've been driving in circles for hours. We spent our last money on gas," Mary Claire admitted, color rising in her cheeks. "We thought we could make the trip in 1 day, but everything went wrong." Jake felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the evening sun. These 3 sisters, alone and stranded, reminded him of something he'd almost forgotten, the simple human need for connection and kindness. "Well," he said, removing his hat and running a hand through his dark hair, "I can't have you sleeping in your truck. Why don't you come inside? I'll make some coffee, and we can figure out where you need to go." The relief on their faces was immediate and profound. "Are you sure?" Sarah Beth asked. "We don't want to impose." "No imposition at all," Jake replied, and he meant it. His exhaustion seemed to fade as he led them toward the cabin. "I've got plenty of room, and it's been a while since I've had company." Inside the rustic cabin, Jake busied himself in the kitchen while the sisters settled into his living room. The space felt different with voices filling it, warmer somehow, more alive. He could hear them talking quietly among themselves, their soft laughter mixing with the familiar sounds of his home. As Jake prepared coffee, he found himself listening to their conversation. They spoke of their grandmother with obvious love, sharing memories of summers spent learning to bake her famous peach cobbler and listening to her stories about life in the old days. Their devotion to each other and to family touched something deep in Jake's heart. When he returned with steaming mugs, he found them studying an old photograph. "This is the only picture we have of her property," Sarah Beth explained, showing him the faded image. She called it Sunset Ridge. Jake's eyes widened as he recognized the location. Sunset Ridge. That's the Morrison place, about 10 miles north of here. "Your grandmother was Eleanor Morrison. You knew her?" Anna Rose asked, leaning forward eagerly. "Mrs. Morrison was one of the finest people I ever met," Jake said, settling into his favorite chair. She used to bring me fresh bread when I first took over this ranch, always had a kind word and good advice. The sisters exchanged glances, their eyes bright with unshed tears. She talked about the neighbors here, Mary Claire said softly. She mentioned a young rancher who reminded her of our grandfather. I think she meant you. They talked long into the night, sharing stories and dreams over coffee that grew cold in forgotten cups. Jake learned that Sarah Beth was a teacher, Mary Claire worked as a nurse, and Anna Rose was studying to become a veterinarian. They learned that Jake had given up a job in the city to honor his father's legacy, that he sometimes went weeks without seeing another soul. As the hours passed, Jake realized something remarkable was happening. The loneliness that had been his constant companion was lifting, replaced by a feeling of belonging he hadn't experienced in years. These three sisters, with their warmth and laughter, had brought life back into his home and heart. When dawn broke over the plains, painting the sky in soft pastels, Jake knew he couldn't let them simply drive away, and as Sarah Beth helped him prepare breakfast while her sisters tended to his horses with natural ease, he suspected they might be feeling the same way. You know, Jake said quietly as they watched the sunrise together from his porch, Sunset Ridge is beautiful, but it's been empty too long. It needs people who understand what it means to care for the land and each other. Sarah Beth smiled, her hand finding his baby. It's time it had a family again. In that moment, Jake realized his prayer for one peaceful night's sleep had been answered in the most unexpected way. Sometimes the best rest comes not from solitude, but from finding the place where you truly belong, surrounded by people who feel like home.